Hey YouTube, this is Ian from Big Rock Media, and today I'm bringing you a review of my Cannondale SystemSix. So before I get started, I just wanted to mention, for those of you who might be new to my channel, I have no sponsorships. I'm not affiliated with any brand, not a bicycle brand, not a clothing brand, nothing. I don't have sponsors and I don't want sponsors. And the reason for that is I try to keep everything unbiased and objective and as real as I possibly can. So anyway, with that out of the way, the Cannondale SystemSix is Cannondale's latest and greatest aerodynamic road bike. When they brought this out last year, they said it was the fastest road bike in the world, and that has to do with some claims they're making about aerodynamics. Now, the reason the aerodynamics are so important, and this is science, not just what Cannondale wants you to think, is that wind is your biggest enemy pushing against you when you're out on your road bike. So if you can make the bicycle more aerodynamic, you're getting ahead of the game. Now, yes, the rider is a large part of the aerodynamic equation, but by making the bike more aerodynamic, you're getting that bonus. Okay, so why did I buy this bike and what led me up to this purchase? So I've been riding road bikes since I was I think I started riding when I was around 20 years old. And actually there's a whole story about how I used to be obese and how I overcame that, but that's for another video. But basically I've been riding road bikes for about the last 15 years. Mostly on road bikes I've had treks, so I've had a lot of different treks. I've had Domanes, I've had Madones, and I've been really happy with them. But also I've had Cannondales, and I've certainly in mountain bikes I've had Cannondales and other brands. So the bike I had before this was a Trek Domane. I think it was a 2016 maybe model year. It was the 5.9. I'll put a photo of it here. Real great bike. It had Di2 shifting, which we're going to get to that, and I really missed the Di2 shifting, which I didn't get on this bike. The Domane, as you know, is kind of more of a comfort bike. It's made to ride smoother. It's still a sport road bike, like a real road bike you can race, but it has some compliance built into it. So in my Domane was rim brakes, and I also didn't have very good tire clearance. So some of the things that I was looking to gain by going to the SystemSix, well, number one, I tend to get a new road bike every 3 to 4 years, so I was due for that. I wanted to go to disc brakes because I'm a huge believer in the stopping power, the safety of disc brakes. I also wanted to upgrade to a bike that had better tire clearance. So I wanted something that I could put like a 28 or even a 30 or 32 tire on, which I could not do with my old Domane because the frame didn't have the clearance for it. I was also looking for something that had more of an aerodynamic advantage. I am a science kind of nerdy, geeky guy, I admit that. And I like the idea of having something more aero. Now, I don't consider myself a pro-level rider, certainly not, but I have done quite a bit of centuries. I've done some pretty good sport rides, some pretty mildly competitive stuff over the years. But you know, these days I'm getting older, I'm married, I have a kid, so you know, I put on 15 or 20 pounds and I'm not in the shape that I was when I was in my 20s, but I still try to get out and ride, you know, 40 or 50 miles a week or whatever I have time for. So when I actually went in and was researching and was going to buy my new road bike this year, this was really not at the top of my list initially. But what happened was I was, you know, comparing it and seeing what kind of deals I could get at that time. I bought it, I usually buy in the winter for some reason, but I was probably going to buy another Trek. But then I started to look at this bike more, and the more research I did, the innovation they had just came out with Aerodynamics, also the fact that I was able to get this particular model at a pretty deep discount, just happened to be the right timing with the shop that I was working with, and that kind of all sealed the deal for me. I was able to test ride this bike, and I noticed it felt a little bit faster than what I was riding. Of course, that could be psychological because it's new bike disorder and all those sorts of things. The grass is always greener. I also really like the looks of it, and Cannondale is known for innovation, and they have really cool technology. So I definitely have over 1,000 miles on this bike, maybe closer to 1,500 miles on it so far. I've done some centuries. I live in the mountains, so I do a lot of climbing, like a lot of climbing, and a lot of steep descent, so I really get the advantage of the disc brakes. In terms of the aerodynamic, I'm not racing, I'm not doing time trials, but I still feel that having the aerodynamic advantage of this bike, you actually can notice it. Where I notice it is descents or riding in the flats. Now I know technically speaking there's still some advantage even when you're climbing at 7 or 8 miles an hour, but that part's harder to notice because mostly you're just noticing your legs burning up from going up the mountain. But the flats and the descents are where I absolutely notice the difference with this bike. Now you can see I did buy the Vision Aero Bars that actually bolt. The bike comes with Vision handlebars, and they sell a bolt-on Aero Bar kit, which is really nice. It's all integrated, and that helps out a lot. I noticed when I was riding my last Century on this bike that I was able to basically coast down these long hills, and I was able to keep up with riders who were pedaling on their normal standard road bikes. So I think there's got to be something to do with the aerodynamics. I like the quality components of the bike. So it's got Ultegra drivetrain, it's got good Vision name brand wheels, it's got the Vision handlebars, it's got a really nice seat post, a nice seat, and I'll put that here. So you know, they don't cheap out too much on the stuff. It's pretty good quality. I like the tire clearance. That's one thing I really mentioned why I bought this, but I'm running 28 tires. The bike came with 23s, which for me was like, okay, I threw those in the trash right away and put the 28s on. I run the GP 5000 tires, which are, you know, really common tires, largely considered, you know, to be some of the best. It came with the Vittoria Rubino Pros, which I didn't think were very good. It's relatively light for an aerodynamic bike. It's not the lightest bike. It's not tried to compete with the super light climbing bikes, but I think this bike is somewhere in the 17-pound range, that area. I'm not really a weight weenie. I don't consider myself too obsessed with weight, so I don't really care 1 pound this way or the other. It climbs really, really well. That probably has to do with the lightweight. The gearing is pretty good. It came with, the crankset is 52-36, I believe, and the cassette is 11 to 30. So it has a pretty good range of gearing, not quite as low as some of the modern bikes are coming with, but also give you a little bit more on the top end. So instead of using a compact 50-34, they give you a 52 on that big ring, which gives you a little more speed across the flats, which this bike needs because it's so aerodynamic. The handling is really good on this bike. It handles really predictable, really natural. I'm totally at ease going, you know, 40, 50 miles an hour on the descents on the mountain roads. The combination of the good handling and the disc brakes, I think, really helps with that. So what are the bad parts about it? Well, there's a few things, and they're not terrible, but they're things that I should mention, and this is an honest review after all. So the ride is not that great. Now, keep in mind, I'm coming from something like a Damane, which is one of the best riding bikes in the industry, so I'm kind of spoiled by that. Now, when I say the ride is harsh, it is going to vary a lot based on, you know, how many potholes you ride through, how heavy you are, what size tire you run, what tire pressure you run. Just for reference, I run a 28 tire and usually have it around 75 PSI, and I weigh around 185 pounds. This is my mistake, so it's not really the bike's fault, but I do think that a bike of this caliber should have electronic shifting. So I regret not going for the Di2 shifting or the SRAM Rad or whatever. I thought I would be fine going back to the mechanical after having Di2, but boy was I wrong about that. This bike, in terms of downsides, this bike is also a little bit on the pricey end for what it is. Although I guess when you consider the technology they put into it and all the development costs they spend, I guess it's not too bad. If you get it on sale, you can get a really good deal on it and you'll feel better about it. But there's better value bikes out there, I suppose, if you go with one of the mail order companies like Canyon or Fazari or one of those. So another thing with the downside, so Cannondale, you know, they definitely have a reputation for using proprietary components. So you'll see stems, you'll see bottom brackets, you'll see seat posts, you'll see things like that that maybe are a little bit higher maintenance or a non-standard thing. They do this for integration, for aerodynamics, to save weight. I used to ride a Scalpel SI mountain bike, and I loved that bike, one of my favorite mountain bikes, but it had a lot of proprietary stuff that needed more maintenance, and of course they're famous for the lefty forks as well. So that's just something you're getting with Cannondale, and it could either be a plus or a minus for you depending on your perspective. I do have a complaint about the brakes. So they cheaped out on the brake rotors themselves. The rotors, from what I understand, are like a steel rotor. They're not the IceTech, the higher end Shimano rotors. So while they give you the Ultegra calipers, they don't give you the rotors that it should have. So what happens is they tend to squeal quite a bit when it's hot or in different conditions. So the brakes are kind of loud. They don't also feel as powerful as I was expecting from disc brakes, but I guess I'm spoiled by big disc brakes on a mountain bike. So would I buy this bicycle again? That is a tough question, but it's also a very good question. I think I would buy it again if I could get a good deal on a higher end version of this bike. So what I would look for would be the electronic shifting and I'd like to have a better wheel set. Now I know I can upgrade those items, but when you look at the cost of buying wheels and group sets, you might as well have just bought the upgraded model from the start. So that's kind of a regret that I have. But I might look at getting something like a Canyon Ultimate or even the Canyon Endurace, just because of the value you get with those mail order companies. The fact that I live a long ways from a bike shop, I never really go back. I do my own service, my own repair. I never go back to the bike shop unless I need to, like a maintenance, a warranty issue or something like that. I try to support them by buying stuff there. And I also have always bought bikes at bike shops. I want to keep bike shops alive. But on the other hand, as a rider who wants the best value, well, that's why you start maybe to look elsewhere a little bit. Also, one thing I might consider with my next road bike, when I do that in the next couple years, is maybe getting something that has a bit more compliance built in. So maybe going back to something like the Damane, although the current Damane is really too heavy in my opinion. But yeah, a little bit more compliance in the ride might be a nice thing. I understand there's always a trade-off between weight and compliance and all those things. I get it, but still, maybe a little bit more would be good. So at the end of the day, the aerodynamics are kind of a cool bonus. They're kind of a nice bragging right that you have one of the most efficient bikes if you measure it scientifically, like in a wind tunnel. And you can notice that in the real world with descents and going along the flats. But honestly, I wouldn't use it as a buying criteria over other bikes unless you're just super into the maximum efficiency with your aerodynamics. And in that case, this bike definitely does deliver. And it also gives you a great all-around road bike for climbing or doing your club rides or whatever you want to do with your road bike. So overall, I'm very happy with the purchase. I paid about $3,500 for this bike brand new, and at that price, I thought it was quite a good bargain for what you were getting. But when you get up to $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, I mean, value is a subjective thing, but to me, I don't know, that makes me nervous paying that much. But for the price I paid, yeah, I did sacrifice on the shifting and on the wheel set, but it's not terrible for the price, actually pretty good. So anyway, good job Cannondale. It's a wonderful riding bike. I like looking at it, I like riding it. I get a lot of good compliments from people, and it's serving me really well, putting thousands of miles on every year. In a couple years, I'll upgrade to something, I'm not sure yet, but anyway, I hope this video was useful. If you're considering buying one of these, whether it's new or used, please hit the subscribe button. Please give the video a thumbs up. It really helps me out. Ride safe. We'll see you out on the trails and the road. Oh.